Hey guys, Levelcap and Luton here with On the Level, the series where Luton and I talk about upcoming battlefield changes or things we want to see in the game. And today's subject matter is going to be what we want to see in Battlefield 4. So, Luton, why don't you start us off with one of the first things that you'd like to see in Battlefield 4?
Okay, so one of the things I would really like to see is a little bit more balancing between the whole PC and console system problem. And a lot of people have a lot of issues with this. A lot of people saying, well, it should have been for just one or the other, or, it doesn't work for console because the maps are too big, or it doesn't work for PC because the maps are too small, and all this kind of stuff. I really think that what they could do with the next title is try and address that a little bit. Try and, balance it up for everyone, and because they're going to make it across a broad system, okay? They want to appeal to everyone. They want to, do it cross-platform. But I think a good way around that is to just try and make, okay, let's say about, 8 medium-sized maps that can work well for both, all right? And then maybe tailor 3 specific maps, which you can only get on PC or the console, and those maps could be tailored to specific game modes, perhaps 1 or 2 for Rush, maybe one other Conquest, something like that, just to give each system something that is their own. And we're not talking very much, we're just talking a couple of maps, and then hopefully that would help alleviate the imbalance that we have with some of the larger, smaller map problems. Does that sound something that would be good for you, Level? Do you think that would help with that issue?
Yeah, absolutely. I know console players, especially in large maps like Caspian Border, sort of feel like they're playing in a large sandbox with nobody else around, or just not enough people to populate the maps. I think Bad Company 2, you probably would agree with me that Bad Company 2 had a more focused style gameplay that worked out better with consoles, and still was great map design for PC play as well. And I think they could... I don't believe the game will be coming out on the next-gen consoles, or even if it does, I'm sure they'll want it to come out on the previous-gen consoles as well. So I think in Battlefield 4, console guys will still be limited player-wise. So you'll definitely have to do something with the maps to make it a little bit better.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I mean, Battlefield 4 is probably coming out around sometime later in next year, I would imagine. And there's been talk of the next-gen consoles around that period, so who knows whether or not they may want to hold off. And there's going to be the whole thing of graphics and so on, and performance, and I'm pretty sure that with the new consoles probably what they'll do is just bump up the memory. I mean, that's most of all they can do, is just improve the hardware in it. So what would be your next thing?
Well, on the sort of PC console subject matter, I think that the next Battlefield title should definitely try and upgrade the user interface for the PC players. In Battlefield 3, it was pretty clear that the interface was very much a console port in many ways, and a lot of people did their own renditions of what a Battlefield 3 PC interface should be like. And it took like a second to look at it and realize how infinitely more useful and quick it would be to select weapon loadouts, because I mean, I understand with consoles, you got your 2 joysticks and stuff to move around and go through the menus, but on a PC you got a mouse, so you can click anywhere on the screen, and the UI just isn't designed for that. And one thing that I think we really lost from games like Bad Company 2 was the ability to just click on the minimap on your squad mate and spawn directly onto the squad mate that was in the best position. You look on the minimap and you're like, oh, my teammate's he's almost on the MCOM. I should spawn on him and help him arm that MCOM or defend him or whatever. But in Battlefield 3, you got to sort of like go through your squad on the side and try and figure out which one is the one next to the MCOM, as opposed to just clicking right on them, So it's become a bit more sluggish, and I definitely think the UI could use an upgrade. Do you think consoles need an upgrade, or do you think it's good with consoles?
I don't think it's bad with consoles, for exactly as you said. It seems to have been designed around that way of doing things. We can click left and right, and we can choose the selections that we need to. When it comes to squads, obviously you just move up or down, select the person that you want to go on to. So it's interesting that they went that way. I mean, obviously the whole thing of selecting a mini-map and clicking anywhere, that's not going to really happen with consoles. So I guess in terms of trying to produce a game that will work across platform, they obviously just went with that, and they went, okay, it's just going to have to be like this. I think it's difficult because you can tailor things so specifically to any system, And I can see definitely that's a need for the PC, but I just think that it's going to be tricky. I think it's going to be tricky for them to weigh up how much they want to put into one thing, because if you're not careful, what you're going to end up with is a completely different system for PC and almost an individual game in many ways. But I do think that they could probably do with tweaking it a bit, maybe not go full out, but maybe make some changes that make it a little bit more easy, a little bit more user friendly.
Yeah, just the effort that they put into Bad Company too is basically all I'm asking for. Okay, so what's the next thing you want to talk about?
I think for me, vehicles, and this was mentioned by one of my subscribers actually, but it's a very, very good idea. And basically what we're talking about here is people hopping in and out of vehicles and how quickly you can do that. A good example was that I've played several rounds, and I've talked about this, was that I was defending Oman, I was on Conquest, and I was in the air, I was in one of the jets. We were keeping it totally clear of other vehicles, we were taking down jets and helicopters as they were coming in, and everyone was fighting on the beaches and stuff, but we were flying around supporting our team. When it got to the end of the round, I ended up with no kills and basically almost no score. I think I was second from the bottom, despite the fact that I'd been supporting the team well, keeping the airspace clear. And the problem was that every time you would get to another vehicle to 20% or whatever, they would just bail immediately, and you could never pick up a kill. The other issue is with tanks and stuff like that, the same thing is people would just bail immediately. And what was mentioned was that you have the idea that it maybe has a little bit more of a dynamic. It takes maybe a couple of seconds for someone to actually climb out of their vehicle. And in doing so, it makes it a bit more tactical. They have to actually have some thought about whether they want to get out. And similarly, this could be for co-pilots and gunners, things like this. If they want to get out to repair, they have to actually make a conscious choice of, okay, I know it's going to take me a little bit of time to get out here. Is it safe enough for me to do so? Some people might say, well, this will slow the game down a little bit. That's probably true, but I think it would help the overall balance and the dynamic of the game. I mean, do you think that's a good idea?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, when you say that, I just think of the Halo animation system, which looks so good and really did work so well, because everybody knows Halo is an extremely fast-paced game, probably more fast-paced than Battlefield. I would say definitely more fast-paced than Battlefield. Yet they use the animation system of getting in and getting out of vehicles so well. In fact, they incorporate the sort of jumping onto vehicles as they go by in some of the later Halo titles. But I think that would be a great thing for Battlefield to benefit from. And I think it's almost funny at this stage in the game when they've got these super dynamic knifing animations that are different for every single position that you're standing around the guy. Like you can knife him while he's laying on the ground. You can knife him while he's like leaning out here, and it'll do all these different knifing animations just for knifing the guy. Yet when you get into a Jeep, you just pop into the Jeep, you pop out of the Jeep. It's a very old school looking animation, and I know it's sort of been with Battlefield all this time, but I think they could definitely use an upgrade, and it would prevent a little bit of, like what you said, people just bailing out of jets instantly. Like if you're going to bail out, then you got to pull the ejection seat. Maybe it'll be a second or two delay before the canopy pops off and all this stuff. Or with Jeep jihading, you can't just pop out of the Jeep. You got to like maybe dive out Grand Theft Auto style, do a little roll on the ground, and then stand up, and then you have the ability to detonate your C4. Just a little bit more. It would not only would it make the game look better, but I think it would play out a lot better as well.
There's other situations you think about, like you say, with the jihading of the Jeeps and stuff like that. I mean, think about this as well. If we were thinking about Armoured Kill coming in, when you have a lot of that tank combat and there's tanks rushing past each other, you know there's going to be times where a tank comes up against another tank, the guy weighs up his options and thinks, I'm not going to be able to deal with this. So when they're close together, he'll jump out, throw C4 at him, detonate it, and jump back in his own tank. Now that's the kind of stuff I don't think really works within the dynamic of Battlefield, and that's something I think adding a slight delay in terms of getting out, I think that would help to alleviate it,
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Okay, what's your next one?
Okay, so the next thing that I'd like to see in Battlefield 4 is for them to continue to expand on the destruction. When they first implemented destruction in the, was it Bad Company 1? I never played Bad Company 1. I think it was just Bad Company. Okay, but I think it kind of came full swing in Bad Company 2.
Yeah.
Where you could just demolish cities. And it's kind of funny because I think Battlefield 3 it really took a step back. Now, in one aspect, they were trying to do more city-based combat. Leveling like Paris to the ground wouldn't exactly be an option. I mean, that would be incredibly complex to do. But at the same time, when you compare it to Bad Company 2, where you're running through all these villages or small towns and you literally have the option to bring every single building to the ground and then destroy bridges and other major methods of transportation, literally like sculpting the battle on the map. You've lost a lot of that in Battlefield 3, and I think although it does look great, it feels a little bit uh, more restricted. And I think that Battlefield 4 should continue to expand on the destruction. I mean, they're pretty clever about making certain structures solid in Battlefield 3 so they could kind of sculpt the battle, better playing out the maps and stuff. But I think they're on a good path, and then they just stopped a little bit too soon. I think they need to take it a little bit more further, make more destructible bridges, or make more objects in the maps where you can destroy. It was kind of like we were talking about last episode, where we were talking about the earthquakes changing the map. Well, if you could use destruction to literally change the layout of the map a little bit more, again, like you could in Bad Company 2. If there's a whole village in front of you with guys held up in the buildings, you park a few tanks, start taking down all those buildings, all of a sudden they don't have cover anymore. So it changes the layout of the map as you progress.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I can think of stuff on like Bad Company 1. There was a lot of solid bridges and stuff. If you think about like Sane Crossings bridges, they're very large and they're very solid. But what you could do is you'd eat away at the thin sections using C4. So those thinner sections, it might take you 2 guys with all their C4, but you would be able to blow apart those thin sections, and that would just prevent any vehicles going across. It wouldn't take down the whole bridge, but it would prevent that. And there's other stuff, like think about Wake Island, which has always been classic for destroying those bridges and preventing or making it more difficult to travel those routes. You can't do anything to them. I couldn't believe it when I got on there. I was firing RPGs at the bridge thinking, okay, this will go down. It just does nothing. It's made of wood, for Christ's sake. So it is a bit stupid. I mean, there's other stuff as well. Think about like very specific situations, like on Metro, the ticket office. Weird that you can't blow up that apart at all. It's just it's a thin concrete wall, and yet you can't do anything. So I was a bit disappointed, actually. It's one of the things I was a bit disappointed with Battlefield 3. There is obviously some buildings that you can have massive destruction on, and obviously taking out the sides of those buildings is really spectacular, and it's great that they can do that. But overall, I felt the destruction was a lot less than Bad Company 2, and I think it was a bit of a shame. It really spoiled it a little bit for me.
Let's see, what's the next subject you want to talk about?
Okay, the next one for me is I would like to see more water-based combat. I'd like to see more small boats, jet skis, perhaps even hovercraft. I always feel like there hasn't been enough of that. I know in Bad Company 2 there were several maps which it really had an element of sort of naval combat. You'd have to get, or sort of think about like Navy SEALs and stuff, moving in fast and stealthy using little jet skis or whatever. And they were, or maybe you could, I don't know, maybe you could have canoes or something, I don't know. But well, you do get canoes, you could have little things, but you could just have one person on his own little mission or something. But I would like to see that a bit more maps, and not just as landing craft. I feel like they've kind of, again with Battlefield 3, I think many of the maps, the water-based stuff has been pushed back just to the role of landing craft, where they literally just run into the beach and jump out. And I know there's some maps you can have like Carg, where using the boats you can circumnavigate like all the way around to those other bases, and that can be quite a useful thing.
Or no shark canals too.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously Wake is a big one for it. But I would really like to see a bit more, perhaps a couple of maps specifically designed for it. And as we said, one of my ideas, I would, think about something like a submarine base, something like that. That obviously was in COD, but that wasn't what I was thinking of. I was thinking more of the idea of having a submarine base as one section of a map. And then there's a lot of kind of water areas and so on, maybe little canals running through areas, and you can use those water canals to get to different areas, and perhaps even having the possibility of going underwater. I think it would be a great thing to have the ability to reach certain areas only by going underwater, perhaps a specific tower, or it's a shortcut or something like that. And then perhaps you could have underwater mines or whatever, underwater mines to prevent boats going different places. So I think the whole kind of naval and water aspect could do with a little bit of an upgrade. How far you take that, I'm not sure. But I just feel like at the moment it's literally pushed to the role of landing craft, and I feel like it's a whole unexplored area that you could really do a lot more with.
I agree 100%. And that's one of the things that people were kind of joking about is like, the LAVs are these amphibious vehicles, and yet the only time you ever have them in the water is when you're taking them from the aircraft carrier to the land. Whereas even in Battlefield 2, they had a lot more rivers and areas where you could actually be using them to cross over areas where, say, tanks wouldn't have the advantage from. So
Mm.
you're getting a little bit more amphibious stuff. And even the boats in that had a better field of view. So the machine gunner on the front of one of those Navy SEAL style inflatable boats could go around and you could start taking out guys with 50 cal. Nowadays, I mean, have you ever gotten a kill with a boat 50 cal? Like, I mean, it's a pretty big
Rarely.
event when it happens. There's just so few situations where you're like, man, I really wish I had a boat and a 50 cal right now. I mean, there's very few situations. So the maps could definitely be geared more towards it. And I think they could also maybe put some armor on some of the 50 cals or something so
Mm.
people aren't
Well, at
just
least
so incredibly vulnerable.
give 'em a bit more power. I mean, did you play Vietnam and Bad Company 2? Did you play that at all?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. The 50 cals in Battlefield 3 are like laughable compared to what they should be in real life or compared to Vietnam.
The Vietnam boats were, if you've never seen this, guys, look it up because they are, devastating. They're hellish. The twin machine guns on that, you really would unleash hellfire against your enemies just sitting up there, racking up the ammo. So yeah, that was a great thing. I mean, those boats in Battlefield 3 would be unbelievable. So yeah, I think it's a big area to explore. All right, what's your next one?
Okay, so this is something that I think console players can definitely relate to. Is I would like to restrict custom game settings to unranked servers. And my reason for this is because most people want to play in ranked games. They like their stats, they like ranking up, they like unlocking guns. So most people are going to want to play in ranked games. But if you absolutely have the urge to play on something with crazy rules like instant vehicle spawn or like 5,000 tickets or this or that, then you can go play an unranked custom game. Why I want this is because right now it's so hard to find a game on PC that isn't instant vehicle spawn for like Conquest. And, DICE has put a lot of time into figuring out the basic game settings, the basic rule settings that they think puts out the most balanced and fun and entertaining gameplay. Yet the most popular servers now are instant vehicle spawns and things that are super fast paced and crazy that allow people to rank up vehicles real fast because they just keep unlocking and it's nothing but endless vehicle combat. But it just leads to a very unbalanced and just overly destructive and crazy gameplay mode, which I've never really been a fan of. And especially if you like air vehicles and you're trying to fly around in those, having an instant vehicle spawn map is just an absolute nightmare because in a jet you'll be doing nothing but shooting down other jets because there's never they never run out of a jet supply. Or if you're in a helicopter duel and you take down the other chopper, you got another chopper to go against. Or even tanks, if you're approaching a spawn point, you blow up the tank that just spawned there and attacked you. Well, another one just spawns right after that and somebody else can hop back into that. If people want to mess around with these game modes, I say fine, let them, but let them do it in an unranked game, and that will force people into playing some of the better balanced and honestly more fun game modes. And I think it'll probably increase the longevity of the game. It's unfortunate because you're sort of giving people right now in this current state the option to choose what they want to do, but I think we're making the wrong decision. People are more concerned about filling up their server as opposed to putting servers out there with good balanced game modes.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, I wouldn't have so much of an issue with it if it wasn't for the fact that DICE servers seem to have almost disappeared. I know you can find them, but normal maps, normal game modes that existed before seem to have almost vanished. And I think that is what has frustrated so many people, is that it's not a case of, choosing between the two. It's a case that they literally can't find these normal maps. I mean, that's, for example, why on my own server I try to run it with standard rules on, the best maps to play for, and there's so many people come to my server and just say thank God for this, or, these are the best games I've had in weeks, just because it's on the normal mode, so they get a much more balanced game out of it. Yeah, I totally agree though. I think they should do that, and I can't understand why they didn't see this coming when they released people to have their own servers and stuff. So yeah, I think that's definitely one to put in. Okay, so I think we're nearly at the end now, but is there any kind of small things you wanted to mention, just any little bite-sized pieces that are worth putting in here?
Yeah, sure. I think one thing that a lot of Bad Company 2 fans out there would like to see is the AT4 back in the game, put anti-air skill back in the game, take the lock-on mechanic out of things. I know a lot of people would like to see that rocket launcher back. And potentially the addition of limited reviving, letting defibrillators maybe have charges, like 2 or 3 charges before they run out, so you don't get these endless res trains, as they call them, where
Yeah.
you can take down 10 guys and yet they're still coming because they're just nonstop reviving. If you limit our revivability, then eventually people will stop.
I mean, like you've said before as well, I think that would help balance up the assault class a little bit, because as you've said before, people often will not choose anything else, so I think having that would help that out. I've got a couple of small things. I'd just like to see some cutscenes as well between bases, or at least at the beginning and end, like we had with Band Company 2. I think people would like that back. For console players as well, I think it'll only happen if we have it on a next-gen console, but console players do want a small increase in player count, and I know that's something everyone wants. We're not talking a lot. At the moment it's 12 each side, perhaps they want to go up to 16 or something like that, but I think a small increase would really help people out. And my last thing as well, I would like to see a small tweak in the aircraft dynamic, because there's so many games where people get locked in an endless loop just flying around and around and around. I think I would like to see some kind of dynamic where you start to stall after you've been turning for a certain amount of time, just because it kind of can really make gameplay suffer, and I think there'd be a lot more enjoyment if people had to fly in a slightly different way, a bit more full on, a bit more combat, and it would also encourage people maybe to attack the ground a bit more instead of just getting into an endless cycling loop.
Oh, you know what you could do is you could add a blackout mechanic. Like if you're in a certain, they already have the G-force implemented to the UI. So if you're at like 9 Gs for like 10 to 20 seconds, then your screen starts to fade out and you're forced to literally pull some other kind of maneuver.
That is that's the best thing. Yes, absolutely. I would go with that.
Cool. Sounds good. So I think that wraps up what we're going to talk about. We would love to hear what you guys think and what you guys want to see in Battlefield 4. And we'll see you guys next time. This is Luton and Levelcap signing off.